Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Gymaholic podcast. In this episode, I had pleasure to be joined by AJ Morris, one of the most profound coaches in UK. He's very known about his passion, intensity in training, and someone who is very long in this industry. He is also very good athlete, and as you can say, he walks the walk and talks the talk. So, without further ado, let's go on. First of all, AJ, thank you so much for joining me. I've had pleasure to meet you in person in Italy on your workshop, and that was amazing experience. As I told you, in Italy, I consume a lot of bodybuilding content on daily basis, and I can honestly say that you are one of, if not the most passionate provider of informations out there. And before we go straight into topics I wanted to discuss with you, can you please briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So, first and foremost, mate, thank you so much for coming to the seminar in Italy. It was amazing to meet you and spend some time around you. And also, too, for having me on the podcast. I know that we discussed this a long time ago in Italy that I was going to come on, and it's great to be here and to be interviewed by yourself. So, for the listeners, some of which may not know me, I've been in the fitness industry since 2014. I started off as a one-to-one personal trainer for 2 years and slowly blended my already online coaching service with like what I did full time. So it was clear to me, like from competing the first time in 2014, that I wanted to also coach competitors. So 2015, I took my first athlete to the stage, gained some momentum, and then pretty much since late 2015, early 2016, I've been full-time online coaching is my main job, my main thing. And I now coach just natural bodybuilders to the stage. I've been lucky enough to have pretty much a full roster every single year since about 2020 and produced a lot of pros, and also at the same time taking people to the highest level of the sport in terms of, pro WMBF Worlds, pro Natural Olympia. And also had some people do very well at those shows as well. So I feel also blessed to be in the position which I am. I'm still fairly young, 28 years old, 29 next year, and to have done those things before 30, I'm very happy with those achievements, because if you were to tell myself back when I was like 2021 that that's where I would be, I'd be like, yeah, that's good. I'd be happy with that. So yeah, that's kind of and then obviously myself as an athlete, I talk a lot about my coaching because I'm super passionate about the coaching, but I also do compete. So I competed since 2014. I've done seasons in 14, 15, 17, 20, 21, and now this year will be my fifth season. Or sixth season, should I say. So very excited for it, to get back on stage and hopefully bring some good improvements to the stage, because that's what I've been working on since 2021 myself, is making improvements and basically taking a prolonged off season, because I just needed to be bigger and better. So that's where I'm at as an athlete.
Yeah. You also, I know about you. You also had experience in motorsports. Can you briefly touch about that?
Sure. So when I was from the age of like 8 until 16, 15, 16, I was heavily involved in motorsport, and that was the only thing that I wanted to do. It was basically I had the same passion that I have now for bodybuilding, but for motorsport. Everything, my whole life was consumed by it. From the fitness element, from, testing every other weekend, from travel, like everything was about motorsport. So I was very lucky to be involved in quite a high level of sport from a young age, because I think what it taught me, if anything, is just that the ability to withstand and uphold myself to a high standard in a pressurized environment. So when I was, 9 years old, I was racing karts that could do like 60, 70 miles an hour, and you sit in the grid waiting to go out, and you know that there's pressure on you to succeed, to perform, to get points for the championship. And I think now it makes bodybuilding for me a very chilled endeavor. I don't really tend to get stressed as a coach because it doesn't stress me out. I always think like if you coach well, the result will kind of take care of itself in a way. Because, if you've put in the work over many years in an off season, you've done everything you can do, and equally with a client, you've positioned them well and the prep's gone smoothly, the stage in itself, it just takes care of itself. It depends who turns up, depends who you're competing against, but the job is mostly done. So it's a very different sport in the way that, when we get to the stage, pretty much the majority of the work, apart from maybe some small things with posing, the majority of the work is done. So yeah, it taught me how to handle pressure, and also the drive to be competitive as well. So yeah, I was very grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, that affected your mindset hugely, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was something that made me tougher mentally than perhaps a lot of other younger guys that I went to school with and things like that. And I also handled academics pretty well because of motorsport. I think if you get involved in some form of competitive sport that gives you structure and gives you an understanding of if you put in effort, you get this, you start, because I wasn't very good academically really when I was like super young. But as I got more heavily involved in motorsport and realized, oh, okay, I can do well if I put in effort when I was like 14, 15, and I got towards like GCSEs and stuff like that, which are here in the UK kind of big exams. I was actually really doing, I was quite strong academically. But that wasn't because I was necessarily the brightest. It was because I realized that if I put in effort to learn how to do well in the tests, I did well in the tests. So that's, yeah, it definitely helped me a lot.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
You already briefly told about your prep. You're now currently in prep, your sixth
Yeah.
prep. And can you tell me, is there something different in this prep in comparison to previous ones, both
Sure.
from nutrition and training standpoint? You talked on Revive Stronger podcast recently about training,
Mm.
not being so attached to certain lifts, etc. But
Yeah.
can you please elaborate something more about the nutrition? Maybe is there something else this prep in comparison to previous ones?
Sure. So definitely, I think it's kind of ties into nutrition in a way, but it kind of mostly is relevant to like where I'm at body composition wise. So in 2020 into 2021 prep, it was a very short 6 month off season from the end of 2020's prep into 2021. So I had a short amount of time to build a really good amount of tissue, and I was in a very good run with training, with performance. So I definitely over egged the rate of gain in that phase. Don't get me wrong, I got to the strongest I'd ever gotten, and I was like loving training, but I just didn't give myself enough time to pull back down in 21 with an appropriate rate of loss. So basically, the nutritional strategy in 21 had to be very harsh. It was losing consistently at 1 to 1.5% of my body weight for the whole prep. It was just an onslaught of just consistent fat loss at a high rate of loss. So that definitely cost me some performance, probably some muscle as well, being honest. Like definitely looking at the way that I'm looking now, body weight rise relative to 21, it definitely cost me some muscle. So I guess nutritionally, the strategy this time has been start leaner. So I started 15 pounds leaner than 2021's prep. And therefore, I've been able to employ a slower rate of loss, which especially towards the end of the prep where, your ability to hold on to muscle is at its lowest, it's the likelihood of you losing muscle is at its highest. Slowing down that rate of loss to very, very gradual pace and allow changes to just come to you rather than chasing them is key. So that's really what I've done differently, I guess, on a nutrition front, because it's basically just changing the pace. And as for the food options, the meal timing, the carbohydrates, fats, protein, all of that kind of stuff, it's mainly very similar. I think my nutritional adherence and strategy has probably been very much the same since about 2017 or 2018. For reference, my 2015 and 2014 prep, I was mostly doing kind of a more of a flexible approach, because if people have been involved in the industry for a while, they'll know that in the mid to late teens of the 20s, so like 2010 to 2015, if it fits your macros for a bodybuilding prep was extremely popular. If it fits your macros for fat loss was extremely popular. And it still is. People still get completely peeled with a flexible dieting strategy. But I found that for me, as soon as I started to switch to more of a structured meal plan, my food focus decreased, my adherence increased even more in an off season specifically, and my performance increased as well because I was just fueling myself with appropriate meal timing, appropriate high quality food every single day, and my routine was just better as a result of it. So yeah, since 2017, I've been pretty much on some form of very similar 5 meals a day with little changes here and there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I hear you. I hear you because also you have that component of predictability, I can say.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's huge for like, things even deeper down the sort of the line like digestion towards the back end of a prep, like I'm at a point now where I need to see the scale weight trend. And if you're having like different volumes of food each day, different sodium intakes each day, then your bowel movement frequency starts to get thrown off. Then your weigh-ins get thrown off. Then your look gets thrown off, when you get sort of within 15 pounds of stage weight, if you have an abundance more food volume one day and less the next, and then sodium high and sodium low. It's like the looks just consistently changing, whereas when you're very stable with your food options and you weigh out your salt and you track your fluids, you're basically in a sort of super consistent routine where the look doesn't change apart from you just losing fat or getting flatter or getting fuller. So it's very easy to predict the changes and therefore your decision making processes become that much more refined.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how many weeks out are you now currently?
I'm 20 weeks out this weekend, so it's coming quite fast. I started at 28 weeks out. I'm currently down just over 13 pounds. So a good amount of the fat loss has been kind of boxed off, which I wanted. I wanted that kind of faster rate of loss at the front end. And I'm now above my stage weight in 2021. I'm now 14 pounds away from it. So pretty close.
Amazing pace, great pace.
Pretty close. Like in a good spot to not have to rush anything. And I've predicted that I'm going to hit my 2021 stage weight, but be substantially leaner. 2021, I was in what I call good condition, but not great. It was like, yeah, like some lines through the glutes and the back, definitely ready from the front and from the side, but from the back, just not 100% elite condition. And that was also because I don't think I had enough muscle to get there. In 2021, I was, what was I, like 24, 25 years old. So still relatively young. And unless you're really like genetically blessed, getting proper diced at that age in the mid to early 20s is relatively challenging. You see some freaks, Julian Brewski, is an example, 25 years old, easily one of the best natural bodybuilders in the world. So you
Daniel
see these,
also, Daniel.
yes, yes, Daniel Kubik, young guy. These guys, they're obviously very hard workers, but they're also part of the genetic elite. So, for me, I only have to compare to myself to know that my process has worked. And I'm confident that this year around I can get to that level of conditioning and I'm prepared. I've set the timeline. Mentally I'm ready to do it. So I'm excited to take it like to a level that I've not ever hit before in some ways.
Yeah, yeah. Are you seeing maybe side effects from prep right now, and how is that maybe different now in comparison to previous time? Because you talked about um, emotional resilience, emotional growth
Mm.
in athlete, and how that can affect your mentality in prep. Because you're now different person in comparison to 2021, for example.
Yeah, so I personally have not really felt any major side effects of prep so far, and I'd be a little concerned if I did because I've just got so much more time left in a deficit. If I had 20 weeks left and I was already feeling pretty trashed, it would just not be a good thing. So, I think the biggest thing is yes, more emotional maturity, more structure to my day, more awareness of my time management. Um, my sleep routine compared to 21 is way ahead. Like every night without fail, I'm getting between 8 and 9 hours of sleep. And that's a non-negotiable. I also have chosen to prep at this time of the year because it's quieter. Like I physically could not prep at the later shows for the season. It's just never going to happen for me unless I choose to not coach. Because as soon as we get to August, every single weekend is at some show with travel, with late nights, and with sometimes anywhere between 6 and 14 athletes in a show. And psychologically, it's just I have to be all in on that, and I'm aware of that. So I chose to prep at this portion of the year because basically the first show that I have to travel to this year is my own. I don't have any now. I don't have any seminars. I don't have any travel. I can just be in my routine at home. Do my normal work, do my steps. It's just like it's so easy and straightforward. And I think the problem that people often have is that the reason why they feel a lot of the prep side effects is because of the environment they're in. I'm very confident of that. Like, yes, people have different body fat set points. Some people might get within 20 pounds of stage weight and it will really hurt. Some people might get within 5 pounds and they still feel good. But I'm a big believer, and I think this year will even prove it to me more. This year is like if you have an appropriate prep timeline and you don't rush, so your rate of loss is appropriate, you take care of your sleep, you take care of your environmental stress. I honestly think you can get very close to stage lean and still feel pretty decent. I really do believe that. And I think a large amount of the people that prep and then feel really rubbish just don't manage their sleep well enough. Don't manage their prep timeline well enough. So they lose too fast. They put their body under too much stress. Um, Cultivating an environment where it's low stress and cultivating a contest prep, which is relatively low stress as well, as low as you can keep it. I think most people can get closer than they think to stage condition, still perform quite well, still sleep well, and still feel pretty good, pretty decent. So that's what I'm hoping this year. I mean, we can do a podcast after the prep, and I can come back and
Yeah, definitely.
tell you whether it was true or not. But I'm pretty confident of that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You also mentioned you started lighter, 15 pounds
Yes.
lighter,
Yes.
and I wanted to touch briefly about pushing body weight in off season. We
Yep.
know leverages are better, you are more stable, etc. But can you please elaborate more about some pros and cons that are overlooked?
Sure. So I think pros is obviously just like you said, your ability to drive performance up for a lot of people, unless you're genetically someone that can be very strong with, maybe a leaner composition, or you're just naturally a very heavy individual and you've got a lot of power behind you by just still being quite lean. Let's say your stage weight is 180, 190 pounds. You're going to be in the off season 200 to 210, be 10 to 20 pounds above stage weight and probably still have good power output and be pretty strong, be able to also create leverages for good performance across all lifts. Whereas if you're like a lightweight bodybuilder or a younger bodybuilder and a bodybuilder that does want to experience what it's like to get strong and also have that as part of a huge fun aspect of your training and create more runway for progressive overload, I think naturally you're probably going to find yourself pushing up a little bit more than the sort of like 20 or 15 pound above stage weight mark. I think it's probably going to be closer to that sort of 30 to 40 pounds above for a lot of people to find their best performance markers. It is individual though, and I think that you can, and I definitely done it where you just take it a little bit too far to where it's not actually offering you any more performance gains out of the body fat that has been added. But you don't know where that is until you kind of go there. So you've kind of got to explore the upper limits to know what gives you the best performance, and where you do feel the best, and you can still eat well, and you can still sleep well, and all of these metrics that keep you in a good off-season groove. The cons is obviously you then have a lot more weight to lose. Even if you've gone there, you've done some really good work and you've built that tissue. If you then try to get ready for a show and you only give yourself 25 weeks to lose 50 pounds, all of that muscle that you potentially added by going there is probably going to come off. So it takes a smart strategy to split up the fat loss that you've then got to do to hold on to the muscle as best as possible. So that's why, this time when I went up to as heavy as 200 pounds, I've come back down to like 175 and then back up to 185 to 190, and then back down to 175, and then back up to the mid 180s and start prep there. So it's like been a push and pull strategy. And it's also been about getting used to different body weights. So the 200-pound maximum that I hit was like 2023. I spent a lot of like 2023 in and around 190 to 200. When I got to 190 in 2023, it was like April off the top of my head. It took me until December to get to 200. It was like so gradual, but in that time frame, if you look through my Instagram, April to December of 2023, I was doing regular 6 to 7 plate Cybex hacks, regular 2.5 plate per side presses at multiple inclines, regular 230, 240 kilo RDLs or stiff legs. My strength was just rocketing. I love that body weight as well because I can just do what I want in the gym, and I know when the time comes I can pull off the body fat. But I much prefer me personally, I much prefer being there. I don't mind being a bit softer. I don't mind having a fatter face and things like that. I don't really care. I just love training. So for me, it's beneficial to be there out of enjoyment, and also I feel like I'm adding tissue in that phase where I'm gaining slowly up to higher body fat levels. And then, like I said, as long as you give yourself enough time to break down the fat loss, come down and get yourself into a better position to start prep. For example, my start position was for prep was like 184, 185, much, much lighter. But it's been comfortable to get to that starting position. It's not been a hassle. It's not been hard. And I do feel like when I compare my pictures that push up was definitely worth it. It was beneficial. I added size from getting up to those kind of body compositions, and I also had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, definitely. What is your estimated show weight? And how much do you think your stage weight will change now in comparison to 2021? You said you're expecting to be similar, but much better condition now. And
Yeah.
how much do you think you can change drastically your physique in that off season, and also you touched slowly and gradually building up a body weight. Do you find maybe beneficial to have some holding phases in that off season period?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, first on the stage weight, I don't imagine it's going to be drastically different just because I feel like I'm going to get substantially leaner, probably 5 pounds leaner. So I'd say on paper right now, when I look at this weight to the weight that I was at in 2021, I'd say it's probably about 5 or 6 pounds of more muscle. So I'd say if I was in the same condition, I'll probably be in the high 150s.
I want.
So,
Yeah.
same condition, high 150s, much better condition, low 150s. So that's that in terms of stage weight. In terms of rate of gain and like using priming phases and holding phases, I think it really depends where you're at and where you're transitioning into. So for example, like when I got to like the high 190s or 200s, at that time of the year, the end of 2023, I was like very busy for travel with shows, with clients on stage. Dieting in that window of time just wouldn't have been a good time to pull into a diet and protect training and have consistency and not have messy nights of sleep and things like that. So I purposely pushed it back until like February to start the diet because I wanted to be in like a really stable environment to get it done. So that's where, spending time at just the same body weight, but still having good training, and creating a better environment for fat loss is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Uh, Also, do you find it hard to balance to be a high level both athlete and both coach? And how are you structuring your day from a routine standpoint? Also, to be very productive in training, to have very hard sessions, to be focused and concentrating on doing the hard work, and also to be high level coach.
So it's a good question. In my opinion, it's as hard as you make it. So a lot of people say, "Oh, can't do this, can't do that," and just they find loads of reasons why, they basically can't be a good athlete if they want to coach a lot of people. So I coach in my opinion, I coach the maximum amount of clients that I could coach within my, current day right now. So that's between 90 and 100 clients. That's my current roster. That's where I operate within. I've been up to over 100 clients and I can't sustain that with enjoyment level being high. It's just not enjoyable for me anymore. I'm more stressed or worried about staying on top of work, and my day becomes a Tetris game of trying to just do my stuff rather than having fun with it. So I purposely don't go above that number. So I don't go above 100 clients. It just doesn't. I don't want the extra money. It doesn't matter to me. If people want to come on board and I'm at maxed out threshold, I'll just say, look, we can start up in a couple of months' time and maybe someone drops off. So managing my number is key. And I think a lot of coaches don't do that and then massively regret it because they could blast past a number where they're comfortable and then realize that their time management doesn't keep up with that number. It could be going from 50 to 70, could be going from 70 to 80. And a lot of the time with bodybuilders is that they get a good run with like social or they prep or something and they have a large growth in their business. And then that large growth exceeds their time management. And then they get into trouble. Their deliverables with coaching fall down, or their deliverables as an athlete falls down as well. Both is not what you want because then you're in the shit with both. So for me, my time management is like get up early. So I get up between 5:30 6:30 in the morning. I start work. I'm at my desk by 6:30. Sometimes a lot earlier than that in contest prep season. And obviously I stop for a meal at around about 8 a.m. But from 6:30 until 11, that's all check-ins, and that's no distractions. And the amount of people that I know coach a lot of people yet are distracted all day is crazy. So I like, for example, it'll be funny for us now looking back, but I don't go on Instagram until like the evening. So I actually missed our first podcast appointment. Oh, my camera is now dying. I actually missed our first podcast appointment because I didn't go on Instagram and I didn't check that we had our meeting. So I don't get any distractions when I'm doing check-ins from 6:30 until 11. And then when I get to 11, I eat my second meal, which is my pre-workout meal. I go to the gym, and then at that point, my WhatsApp is like, unless I've got clients on stage and they need immediate responses, I don't have any notifications on my phone. So I don't get emails, I don't get WhatsApps, I don't get anything. All that time is about is just training. So I train, I come home, I shower, and then my phone goes back to like I get back on WhatsApp and I get through any messages and I'll then update my MBW log, do my Instagram post. With Instagram, I really try and stick to this. Some days I'm not so good, being honest, critical of myself, but most of the time I'm really good with just going on, posting, resharing all the stories that I might have been tagged in, and getting off. Half an hour, 40 minutes on Instagram tops. And if you listen to this and you're a coach and you're struggling with time management, I highly encourage you to check your screen time on Instagram. If it is above 1 hour, you're wasting your time. Genuinely. Unless you're in a stage where you have to be on social to deliver like communication, to like have leads and things like that. But if you're actually a busy coach and you've got like, let's say more than 40 clients you've got to take care of, get off social and start taking care of the people you actually have to take care of first. Because yeah, I see a lot of people, get up, and the first thing they do is go on Instagram, and then you're in the train of distraction that this is. That phone is like is built, social media is built to distract you. So yeah, that's a big one with our time management, and that's why I get stuff done efficiently, and that's why my clients don't wait around for feedbacks, is because I don't prioritize anything but the feedbacks, and but my job, because that's the most important thing. So yeah, and I guess that then leads me to my point is like, if you want to grow something successful, you have to be very strategic and very, mapped out with your day. Every day matters, and every day for me is also very similar, very samey. And I've kind of cultivated my life to be like that. Like I have my girlfriend's also a coach, and I'm not saying your girlfriend has to be a coach to be successful, but, it means that she understands completely my schedule and my time so that, we don't do certain things at certain times because that's when we work or that's when we do messages or whatever. So my entire life is set up to be, the best coach I can possibly be. And also at the same time, get good sleep, train well, and be a good athlete. So yeah.
Thank you so much for this advice. It's this is huge, definitely.
That's all right.
And you touched about creating content for MBW, and can you please talk a little bit more about creative work and training? And to be quite honest with you, I need to do all of my creative work before my training because in most cases I'm wrecked after training. And how
Sure.
are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so I guess with my creative stuff with MBW, it kind of a lot of the stuff you'll see when I post like the reels or of course the full length video. I think for me it kind of comes just quite naturally in the session. So when I do the reels and stuff, I don't tend to think about them. So I don't really plan them or like set a structure for them. I talk to Alex as if I'm talking to like a friend or a follower. Obviously Alex is my friend, so it helps. But I talk to him, my videographer, as if I'm trying to educate him on my process. So when I'm going for an exercise, I'm just casually talking to him as if I had a client in the session. So a lot of the content that we create comes naturally. I must admit I do feel more tired after a session where I've filmed versus a session where I don't. And then in terms of like, creating my own content like for social media and stuff like that, I must say that I don't always again think too deeply about what I post on social now versus what I did maybe 5, 6 years ago. 5, 6 years ago, I definitely, for me to gain my following and gain, the awareness I wanted as a coach, I had to make sure that every post I did gave some form of value. But now, with where I'm at with, I'm blessed to be in this situation, but I have enough business and enough inquiries to the point where I am in a lucky spot where I can just share my training, share a short caption, and that can be keeping my social going. Whereas maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it would be like, right, how can I educate with every caption I write and think about them and things like that. So, but to be honest, I also want to get back into doing more of that stuff. So, in that case, I'd always recommend that people, like yourself, you kind of think about your creative stuff. So maybe even you write your captions and you just keep them in your notes, and then when an appropriate set of training clips comes up, you whack the caption with that post, and it's nice and fluid. Because that's what I used to do as well, is like write up several different styles of posts and captions, and then just post them with a certain degree of training footage, and that usually worked quite well. But yeah, a lot of the MBW stuff just comes kind of like off the tongue.
Yeah. Also, do you find it much easier nowadays to switch off on training in training sessions because you now do you need to go to be in that tunnel vision in training, but
Sure.
and if you are constantly in that tunnel vision, that can drain you so much.
Yeah.
And do you find much easier to switch off tunnel vision and then to switch off?
Depends what time of year it is, to be honest. Like when I'm in the depths of a contest prep season and I have a lot of athletes on stage and I also have a higher degree of pressure, I find myself having to work harder to get into that zone. Definitely, because I'm then thinking, like, what am I going to do with this peak? And, I wasn't so happy with that look. Or it's just, and you can't avoid that coming into your mind. At some point, those things will come into your mind. So, you can't completely block it out. You just got to learn to like deal with it in that moment. So, yeah, that's why I really do like this time of the year in a lot of ways, because as much as I miss being at the shows, I don't miss having a load of things running around in my brain. So yeah, it's difficult, but I think what helps me there is like having a little bit of a period of time between, switching off from the work that I got to do in the morning and then getting into the gym, whether that's just on the drive to the gym, I'm switching off, or, a little bit of time to just sort of like compartmentalize all the work stuff. and then think about the training. But yeah, my advice, I guess, is to really try and separate the two. You know, wear your coaching hat when you're coaching, and then wear your training hat when you're in the gym. And it could either be like psychologically for me, I always wear different clothes at home versus the ones I go and train, and I always change. So, and I always wear my hat when I train, and I never wear my hat at home. It's little things like that that make me feel right. It's time to train. It's not time to work anymore.
I'm doing that with chewing gum. Gum goes
There we
in,
go.
fun goes out.
Yeah, that
And
works.
also, you're a very musical person, and you absorb so much energy from music.
Mm,
And your all sets often have Hans Zimmer in
yes.
background related to that. I'm also a huge music lover, and I also absorb huge energy from music. And I noticed during the years that it's a stimuli. And
Mm.
related to that, how do you find music as a stimuli, and how much you think it can make the difference? And are there any possible downsides, maybe?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, music for me is huge. I notice when I don't have like if my AirPods die and I have a session where I don't have music, even if it's just the gym music, it's just very tough to get into that same spot. But music can also be, and in general, neural drive can be something that's just as bad as it is good. So, and this is something that I always try and educate my clients on is like kind of deploying your tools when you need to deploy the most. So if you go into the gym and you've got a leg day and your structure is like adductor, seated leg curl, leg extension, hack, leg press, for example, I'm not gonna deploy my like music that I need until I get to the hack. You know, I'm not gonna like blast Hans Zimmer on my favorite Hans Zimmer song that gets me feeling all kinds of like in a different place, you know, like subconscious, so to speak. I'm not gonna do that for like an adductor. I'm just gonna listen to like more stable music, more consistent music, more just get me going, like nothing that I'm like really having to like utilize. And then by the time that I get to the hack, I'll like use whatever I need to use to get the job done. Because if you use it throughout the whole session, you'll either notice that by the time you get to the main movements where you really need it, it's a bit dulled out. It's not doing the same thing. It's like caffeine. You can't just keep having more of it and keep hoping it works. And you'll also notice that, again, like caffeine, if you just keep slamming it, you're going to get a massive crash. So if you keep trying to get into this like very like sympathetically driven high state of arousal all the time with every single lift, you're going to be so trashed. You couldn't do anything post workout. Like you wouldn't even be able to like drive home. You'd be so trashed, you know? So I think that's really important. Then also using music as like as an off switch as well. So if you come out of the gym and you go home and you're blasting your top set playlist on the way home, you know, that's not going to be good in terms of trying to drive you back into, you know, more of a parasympathetic state, more of a relaxed state. So flick the music down to more chilled vibes or nothing and focus on bringing yourself back down to earth after a session because the goal as soon as you leave the gym is to recover. So, you know, it needs to be flicked round into recovery mode, get home, relax, eat. Because also, if you're, you know, if you're eating half an hour after training, you need to be trying to like get back to, you know, a state where you can digest the meal well. You often find people with really bad digestion on leg days because they've trashed themselves and they try and cram in food afterwards. So, you know, trying to get back into a relaxed state is really key.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how much your sessions are in length right now, currently? Average, average.
2.5 hours. 2 hours for like push and pull, and then closer to 2.5 for legs.
Yeah,
That's typical.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, you are a big proponent of intra nutrition.
Mm.
Can you touch a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So intras is pretty much something that unless you're on very low calories, I'd always favor to keep in throughout the whole prep, or a fat loss phase in general, just because for me, I found like one in terms of the performance benefits, it's pretty substantial for me, noticing like versus having it and not having it. Recovery benefits, I think having an extra MPS spike during training, you're only going to get benefits out of that. And equally, at the same time, having a steady flow of glycogen is good for stabilizing blood sugar. So when you're very lean, obviously you're very insulin sensitive. You eat your pre-workout meal, even if you have a bit of fats or slower digesting carbs with it, you're going to get a spike in blood glucose. And then as you train, you use the glycogen. You're slowly going to burn off the glycogen and start to decrease blood glucose a little bit. So keeping that stable blood sugar throughout training with a little bit of glycogen coming in through fast acting carbs, sipping on them as well as in a split drink, like an intra workout, a 1.5 liter bottle. I just find that you just get less frequency of hyperglycemic events like reactive hyperglycemia, which you get from the meal, or just a hyperglycemic event from just low blood sugar during training. There's just so many benefits off like maybe just 20 grams of carbs and 15 grams of EAAs, or at least 3 grams of leucine from your EAAs. So I see no reason to not have it. The only reason why I wouldn't is maybe your sessions are very short. They're not quite as long as mine, or you find you have some digestive issues with intras, which some people do.
Are you using mostly cluster dextrin or maybe even dextrose?
Yeah, cluster dextrin for everyone that I work with. Again, I find you obviously it's faster digesting than dextrose, even faster. So I think that going for the higher quality, faster absorbing carbohydrate options is always going to be best for utilizing it during training.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you. And do you find easier now to take yourself to the boundaries? This is from intensity standpoint
Mm,
on training, because I think that's one thing it's mostly overlooked. You also talked about that extensively, and many people talked about how much volume, how much sets, what's the different exercise, what's the stimuli, lengthen position, shorten position, but
sure.
also, I agree with you. Intensity is king. And can you please touch a little bit deeper about intensity and training near your boundaries, and
Mm.
what boundaries and capabilities really are?
Yeah, so I mean, boundaries, I think they need time first and foremost to explore. You can have boundaries when you first get into the gym that can be your what you feel like is your maximum performance, and then you get into training, you gather more and more experience, and you suddenly realize that 2 or 3 years later those boundaries were actually very, very low in terms of where you think you could take yourself within a set. Some of that is pain tolerance, like a lot of sets, especially when it comes to lower body training, specifically lower body training, is about toleration of pain. How much can you tolerate your legs being hammered with a stimulus, but it's also like, even I see it a lot with clients, it's self-belief. It really is self-belief. A lot of people don't know what they can do until they at least try it and push themselves. I see a lot of cross transfer from specific sports. So if people have more of a sporting background, I feel like their pain tolerance and just their general ability to take up and get into certain movements with not as much thought process as others. Like they just move better. Their bodies are used to like complex movement patterns, because a lot of bodybuilding movements are not really that complex movement patterns. But when you look at, okay, let's say you've played like hockey or basketball or football, like you learn how to like do a lot of hand-eye coordination that then bleeds into your ability to understand, okay, right, if I'm going to hip hinge, my hips are going to go that way and the bar is going to be my hands, and yeah, it all flows nicely. So, if all you've done in your, younger years was like play video games, your only hand-eye coordination is like with your hands. That's it. Like you don't know how to move your body. So learning how to move your body is key to being able to push things, because you then have good execution. But yeah, like a lot of it is more psychological. So it's the self-belief, it's understanding what aggression and like neural drive can do with your sets. If you get yourself into a really, really, really good place in your head where you believe you can move the weight, where you're at one with the weight as well, like you're not fighting it. It's something that you welcome. It's not something you avoid. It's like you're at one with the weights. You can access performance that you previously thought was just not even possible. So, yeah, I think it really is a time thing. And my advice for a lot of people is kind of like just try and expose yourself to environments where people are really training very, very hard. I see a big correlation in people that can train naturally quite hard that have just grown up in gyms that are surrounded by other people training hard. And I see a big correlation with people that can't train very hard and can't train very well with environments where they're surrounded by a lot of people who are doing the exact same. So, where when if you're training in an environment where most people, now obviously not everyone's blessed to have a good environment, and I respect that. But if you're training in an environment where most people are going to the gym just to exercise, and you're the only one going in with a logbook and progressing your lifts and like striving for better and like training your absolute arse off to build muscle, it's like you're gonna have to have like a crazy mindset to get there first because you're the only one doing it. It's like hopefully, you encourage all the other people to start doing it as well, and you build an environment for yourself. But um, I just see that. I see that a lot. Is that the people that know how to train have been exposed to that. They see it in real life because it's different. You can't just see it online in a YouTube video and try and emulate it. You have to kind of see it in real life, or train with someone that can train really hard as well, and that will start to then kind of cultivate that mindset and that environment for yourself to be able to just get after it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So definitely pushing yourself to boundaries is skill component.
Definitely a skill component. Yeah, 100%. And knowing how to blend both good execution with high intensity training is definitely a skill component because it's not easy. You're also playing sometimes with exercises where there is a higher risk of injury, and you need to be able to have the right mentality to be able to compose yourself, brace well, protect your body, and also at the same time, train like an absolute animal and not have fear. Because the moment you have fear, it's like kind of it's the intensity killer is fear really. I mean, you have to have an element of fear, but you have to welcome it. You can't just sort of like want to get it over and done with. You have to live in the discomfort, so to speak, of the challenge of trying to beat the logbook because that's why it's there. It's to kind of make things hard. That's why we try to beat our previous numbers in progressive overload. Is that is the challenge that we're chasing, and it's not easy. But yeah, welcoming that is key.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I don't want to take too much of your time today, and thank you for being my guest.
It's a
And
pleasure.
it was huge honor. And can you tell us where people can find you, AJ?
Sure, no problem. So, I mean, first and foremost, thank you for the chat. Time has absolutely flown by when we chat about bodybuilding. It's always quick on these podcasts, but yeah, obviously, I hope this is digestible content for listeners. As for myself, if people want to follow what I do, then the best place to follow along with my process is either my Instagram or MBW. So Instagram is AJ Morris underscore. MBW is Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide. As you can see the logo on the back over there. That is a membership platform for natural athletes. And we have a community there, which is like based on a forum. So you can ask any questions and our athletes and members will get back to you. And we also have loads of workout videos. I think we have over like 150 hours of workout videos now. And we also have a ton of courses on there, which give you a really decent basic understanding as to like all of my principles, training, nutrition, contest prep off season. So yeah, it's a good place to start. And it's also only like 9.99 a month. So to get into that level of like, okay, build your base knowledge and then ask some really in-depth questions, you can do a lot there. I know that many people have prepped their clients just off using MBW and done a really good job. So, yeah, that'll be a great place for people to potentially join up. And yeah, I have YouTube as well, AJ Morris Fitness, I think it is, but just search AJ Morris, you'll find it. And I'll be starting my first video of like this kind of next phase of running my YouTube again is coming out next week. So I'll be doing a little bit more YouTube long form content all the way up until my shows this season. So looking forward to that.
Thank you, AJ. I would love to have you here again after your prep and wish you all the luck.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Cheers.
Cheers.